Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us on this very first edition of a brand new program in a brand new week, in a brand new month of a brand new year, right? Thank you very, very much for doing this with us. You're very welcome to the maiden edition of this lovely program, Developing National Innovation Systems for Absorptive Capacity. I repeat, developing national innovation systems, for absorptive capacity. Don't mind me. My focus is on absorptive capacity, as you will see as we go into the program. My name is Tolu Omodarai. It's a joy, it's a delight, it's a pleasure to be welcoming you on this very first edition of the program for this new year. Today, Tuesday, January 7th. 2025. Can you believe it? Just like that, 2025. I hope you had a good holiday. I hope you had a restful holiday. I hope you had some kind of a retreat to reflect and to plan for the new year, right? Today, we are going to be discussing a little bit of, why this program is important, but we are also going to, start looking at the first part of that theme, right? So when we say developing national innovation systems for absorptive capacity, there are essentially two parts to that theme. One, the first part is the national innovation systems that we have to develop, right, or strengthen in nations that they already developed. But the other part is the end to which we're developing this national innovation systems. And that's the one that, honestly, I may be much more particular about. That second part, that is for absorptive capacity. Very, very important, right? We are not just developing national innovation systems for the sake of having an innovation system, for the sake of saying we are leading innovation, right? But we are developing these national innovation systems or strengthening them in cases where we have already developed them to the end that we can actually strengthen or enhance our absorptive capacity. Now, if you are with us in the last quarter, the program I anchored in the last program on ARC, that is developing a national human capital policy. We talked a lot about the knowledge economy, right? Why do we need to stimulate the knowledge economy? Why do we need to develop human capital, right, with specific economic and social development goals in mind, right? Why do we need to ensure, when we say absorptive capacity, why do we need to ensure that knowledge is not just being created for the sake of knowledge, but to the end that economic and social development may be attained, and that is the absorptive capacity. When there is absorptive capacity, then you have actually built or are strengthening the capacity of your economy to extract maximum gains from the knowledge that is being created in the economy. That is when creativity evolves or matures into innovation, right? And that's the part where we are building on in this quarter, right? We are now looking at how do we develop national innovation systems that are actually focused on enhancing the absorptive capacity. Because without that, you don't actually have innovation. Come to think of it, when you talk about innovation, the real sense of the word, it includes the contextualization of economic possibilities, right? So when you talk about innovation, and we started laying the foundation for this last quarter, we started talking about the fact that there's a difference between creativity and innovation. Creativity is when you come up with a new idea. Creativity is when you create new processes, new products. But when you talk about innovation, it takes the whole context of economic performance into consideration. So we are not just creating technological advancement, for example, right? You are also factoring in how to ensure that there is optimal economic performance of the technological advancement. Very, very important. So if you actually understand the meaning of innovation, you will realize that there is no separating of innovation from absorptive capacity. There is no separation of innovation from economic performance, right? Because when you are creating for the purpose of genuine, robust, and wholesome innovation, the economic potential of the creation is already factored in. And this is one of the things we want to, dwell on a lot. And that is really important so that nations can attain competitiveness, right? If you don't have innovation systems, national innovation systems that are targeted towards absorptive capacity, that are targeted towards ensuring economic and social development, maximum economic and social development, then if we're not careful, we will simply have creativity, but we won't have innovation, right? And it will not translate into national competitiveness, which is the essence of this program. This program is about helping nations to attain national competitiveness, right? To ensure that as nations, we are not just creating knowledge, but we are actually translating this knowledge into economic and social development that enables us to rise in different metrics, whether it's GDP, whether it's GDP capital, whether it's the human capital index, by whatever metrics, by whatever factors we want to measure it, this knowledge must be translating into economic and social development. Hence the need for national innovation systems which are targeted towards absorptive capacity. It's a joy, it's a delight to have you on this program. Again, this is the very first edition of Developing National Innovation Systems for Absorptive Capacity, this beautiful first Tuesday of 2025, January 7th. And we are very delighted to have you with us. My name is Tolu Omodara. Now, like I said, there are two elements to that program. To this program, right? There are two elements to that theme. The first part is developing national innovation systems, and the second part is the absorptive capacity, which ensures that the national innovation systems developed are targeted towards economic performance, optimum economic performance. However, as we start, we are going to focus a little bit on the national innovation systems itself. What exactly is a national innovation system? And I'm saying this so that we don't have any assumptions. Again, like I said, for nations that already have this national innovation systems, it's good to know that we have it, but we're also going to look at how they can be strengthened, right? And for nations that do not seem to have it yet, or do not seem to have it in a very strong way yet, there's also hope. And I'm saying that because you'll be surprised to know that the nations that you think are highly developed nations, which had national innovation systems for a long time, which have had national innovation systems for a long time, are not the only nations who are growing in their national innovation systems, right? So we have the large high-income countries with national innovation systems. Of course, you have the US, the United States having national innovation systems. You have nations like the United Kingdom, Britain having national innovation systems. You have France having their national system of innovation. You also have Italy having a system of innovation. So like I said, yes, there are nations which are expected to have national innovation systems actually having their national, including Germany, of course. I forgot to mention that. Germany also has a national system for technical innovation, right? These are expected, no doubt, right? However, we also have the so-called industrializing nations, right, that have also made their mark in terms of national innovation systems. And that's why I said, even for nations that don't seem to have it yet, there is hope, right? We have industrializing nations, for instance, like Korea, that began to build their national system of industrial innovation, and they've been growing in it, so much so that today that the Android phone you are holding, if you're holding one, was probably made in South Korea, right? The national system supporting technical advancement in industry was also built in Taiwan. Taiwan, again, was not an innovation giant when the US and Britain and Germany was, but they began to grow, they began to industrialize, and they put in place a national innovation system. Ditto for Brazil. Brazil also began to develop national systems supporting technical advancement in industry. And the same thing for Argentina. They also created a national systems of innovation supporting technical advancement in industry. So I want you to know that regardless of the nation you are listening to me from, regardless of the nation that you're responsible for, there is hope. As a matter of fact, even the nations that seemed to be the leaders in national innovation, the point came when they began to get concerned about whether they were still having their competitive edge, right? Whether they were still leading in national innovation. And they had to do some things to strengthen the national innovation. That's why I said, regardless of where you're listening to me from, regardless of the nation you're responsible for, this is a program that matters to you. Whether you are a nation that has been historically strong in national innovation, or you are a nation that appears not to have started yet, you can also find your way if you're in the latter category, like the likes of Taiwan and South Korea have grown, like Brazil is also growing. India is another example. We spoke about India in the last quarter, how they took the potential for knowledge economy and translated it into performance. It's one of the one of the growing economies today, right? And innovation was a strong part of it. Very, very important. There is a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity for that advancement in national innovation if you're already building one, or if you have built one. And even if you appear not to have built one, there's also significant potential for you to create a national innovation system. But first of all, again, let's look at the issue of national innovation system. What exactly is a national innovation system, right? Before we know what we're trying to aspire towards, right? Or before we attempt to aspire towards either building or strengthening it, is important to ask ourselves, what exactly is a national innovation system? Well, the first thing to know is that it is a system. A national innovation system is a system. And when we use the word system in this sense, we are talking about a network of institutions, policies, and mechanisms, right, that are articulated and coordinated to enhance innovation in a nation. I'm going to say that again. A national innovation system is a system, right, of related institutions, agencies, and policies that are articulated and deliberately coordinated to enhance innovation in a nation. Now, one thing you have to know when you talk about a system is that to a very large extent, a national innovation system has to be deliberately articulated. It has to be deliberately created. It doesn't just happen, right? Now, parts of the national innovation system can come to be on their own. Because when we say it's a network of related institutions, agencies, policies, even firms that come together to enhance innovation in a nation, right, that come together to even create it, not to talk of enhancing it, to even create it to begin with in a nation, you might say, oh, so what happens if each of these exists separately? Is it still a system, for instance? So we have supporting agencies, we have universities, definitely they are a central part of the national innovation system, though not the only part of the national innovation system. There are government agencies, research institutions that they are part of the national innovation system. There are also private sector firms that significantly fund research sometimes and also pilot the findings from universities and research institutions that are a strong part of the national innovation systems. Of course, the policies, the governmental policies that are created to stimulate, to strengthen, to enhance, to support, to boost, to scale innovative findings are also a very strong part of the national innovation system. So you may say, if we take if any of these exist on its own, is it still a system, right? So if the universities if universities and research institutions were operating in a disconnected manner from the private sector organizations, for instance, that want to fund this research or that want to test these findings from the research, is this still a national innovation system? Honestly, the answer will be no. And that is why policies are part of the national innovation system. The creation of the national innovation system is required or requires the connection of these different parts of the system, right? They must be deliberately connected through an undergirding policy. There must be a clear policy intent to begin with in order to have a national innovation system. There must be clear policy goals. There must be clear strategic direction, right? That this is what we want to do. This is what we want to achieve in the nation. This is where we want to position our nation in terms of innovation. This is the kind of innovative competitiveness we want to attain. This is even the sector we want to target, for instance, right? These things must be clearly defined from a policy perspective. Then we can begin to create a system of interconnected parts that now understand how they must coordinate and they must network to establish a strong national innovation system that will position the nation in terms of innovative competitiveness. Extremely important. So a national innovation system is a system. It sounds tautologous, but it's important to emphasize that. A national innovation system is a system. It's a system of institutions, it's a system of private sector organizations, is a system consisting of governmental agencies, as well as policies, right? And the connection, the interactions, the coordination, the collaboration, right, of these different parts of the system together will determine the innovative competitiveness of the nation. Very, very important. Innovative level of the nation, extremely important. So it's important to know that a national innovation system is definitely a system, right? Now, I also want to look very quickly at the word innovation, right? We've looked at the word system, right? Now let's talk about the word innovation. What exactly is it that makes a national innovation system innovative, right? The first thing we have to understand about innovation is that it is largely about experimenting, right? It's about researching, definitely, but it's also about experimenting. And that is where you talk about the intersection between science and technology. Very, very important, right? And sometimes we think that the science always goes before the technology. In other words, the theorizing always goes before the technology, but honestly, not always. Sometimes the technology goes before the science, right? Sometimes some people create, sometimes some people, test some things, and then after it is tested, then the science begins to try to establish why it worked, right? But the focus is that ultimately, whether the science goes before the technology or the technology goes before the science, what is important is that ultimately there is a creation and there is novelty. Very, very important. Anytime we're talking about innovation, we're talking about creation of new things, right? So, for instance, when the Wright brothers created the aircraft, right? I think it was in 1903. The principle or the scientific principle of aerodynamics had not yet been established, right? But the Wright brothers, they were said to have been creators of bicycles, right? This kind of explains why the first aircraft they created actually looked like a bicycle, right? So they created it and it worked and it was able to fly. Then after it flew, the science then began to unravel it. That was when the principle of, I think, thrust and lift was established, right? They now began to figure out the science behind it. But there are also times when the science, of course, goes before the technology, right? I think an example of this might be the case of electricity, right? Some science had gone ahead, and then based on that science, more research was done, and eventually electricity was created. Now, whichever way it goes, there is definitely an interconnection between science and technology. That is the truth. And that is why universities and research institutions are a central part of a national innovation system, though they are not the only part, right? Whenever there is an innovation, there is certainly a creation. What inspires the creation sometimes is new knowledge. And that's why we're saying in last quarter's program that knowledge must be for the purpose of creation, and that creation must be geared towards optimal economic performance. But we're not going to talk about the economic state. Today we're just looking at the innovation along with the system. Whenever you talk about innovation, there has to be a system. We're going back to the word system that, sort of encourages knowledge. Very, very important. There is such a strong intersection between science and technology that you almost cannot talk about technology without the proliferation of knowledge. I'm going to say that again. There is such a strong connection between science and technology that you almost cannot talk about innovation without talking about the proliferation of knowledge, right? So when there is a lot of science, when there's a lot of research, when there's a lot of findings, when there's a lot of, proven postulations, right? When there have been research and evidence has been amassed over time, right? Especially kind of evidence that has been subjected to the principle of falsifiability. I think that's the word. When you try to falsify it, and the more you try to falsify it, the more you gather evidence that it is actually a true principle. At least nothing has disproved it, right? The more you gather that kind of knowledge, then the easier it is to proceed from that knowledge to some form of experimentation. I need to say that again. That's really important for me on this program, because we are not talking about knowledge for the sake of knowledge. We're not talking about science for the sake of science. Science must translate into technology. Knowledge must translate into inventions. Very, very important. And we have had people who have invented in the past because they have been inspired, right? And they have been stimulated to ensure that the knowledge and the science they know actually translates into inventions and technology. Very, very important, right? So when you talk about innovations, you're talking about creation, but the creation doesn't come from it doesn't come from the skies. It doesn't come from nowhere. Typically, knowledge has gone ahead, right? Some form of accumulation of knowledge, sometimes even generations, sometimes decades. Many times you find inventions building on knowledge that has gone ahead. And this is where the university and research institutions come in handy. Like I said, they are not the only part of the national innovation system, but they are a central part of the national innovation system, because they tend to support the accumulation and the institutionalization of knowledge. If you want to know what has been done in a particular field, what has gone ahead, so that you can build on it, one easy way to do that is to connect with a university or a research institution and to see the bank of knowledge, the bank of evidence that has gone ahead, so that you can build on that and you can take that further. Very, very, very important. So again, the word innovation has a lot to do with creation, but you are not creating from nothing. Typically, you are creating from knowledge, you are creating from science, you are creating from research. Sometimes you're even creating from previous inventions. Sometimes you are building on previous inventions. Sometimes you are, sort of taking it forward, right? You are, I don't want to use the word accelerating, I want to use the word, you are progressing, right? So you're progressing that invention. You're taking what has been done before and you're proceeding with it. And this is very, very, very important, right? Many times, and that's another aspect of innovation. I need to quickly add that innovation is not only about completely new creations. Sometimes it's also about the enhancement of previous creations. Sometimes about the perfection of previous creations. I'm hesitant to use the word perfection though, because there's always room for continuous improvement. There's always room for boosting the strength, the resilience, the capacity of the invention, and so on and so forth. So I'm hesitant to use the word perfections, but at least there is. So the point I'm making, I hope it's clear to you, is that sometimes the innovation, when you're creating, sometimes you're not creating something entirely new, but you are building on previous inventions. You are improving. I think that's a safer word to use. You are improving previous inventions. Very, very important. For instance, although the Wright brothers created the I think the aircraft in 1903, if I'm not wrong, it was, I think, until it was in the 1930s, about 3 decades after that, they began to design and develop the DC-3 in a way that the airplane eventually became a reliable means of transportation on commercial routes. Very, very important, right? So the invention was created in 1903, but it did not become a reliable means of transportation on commercial routes until the 1930s. In other words, they had to take other people to research the science. Like I said, after the Wright brothers made the aircraft fly, they then came to say, oh, why is this coming? Why is this flying? Then they were able to propose the principle of thrust and lift. Then they were able to enhance it, and it became a more fuller scale invention. Right? It became something that could be commercialized, and the improvement has only kept going further and further and further. And this is very important to take note. In building a national innovation system, yes, it must be a system. We've talked about that. It must also be something new, but the newness can go both ways. Sometimes it will be something entirely new, as like it happened in 1903 when the Wright brothers created the aircraft for the first time. And sometimes you are creating something new out of what already exists, because it's now time to scale it. That word is very important, right? Especially when it comes to absorptive capacity, when you are developing the national innovative systems to enhance your economic and social development. You have to think about scaling. It has to be something that can be commercialized. And before you go that route, like Americans will say, or you go that route, like the British will say, right? In other words, before you follow the path to commercialization, you have to first take the path of increasing perfection. I'll say that again. Before you try to follow the path to commercialization, it's very important that you first take the route to increasing perfection, right? And that's where the National Innovation System includes both entirely new creations and improvement, significant improvement of existing creations. There's so much to talk about. Well, let me touch the last point very quickly, and then we call it a day for this first edition. National. You may say, oh, why does it have to be a national innovation system, right? Can't we just have a regional innovation system? Yes, there's room for that. We can have regional innovation system, but we should still network the regional systems to a national innovation system, because ultimately, if you're going to play on the global scale, if you're going to compete on the global market, you're going to go there as a nation. You're not going to go there as the state of New Jersey or as the state of Pennsylvania. You're going to go there as the United States of America. You're not going to go there as Lagos State. You're not going to go there as Anambra State. You're going to go there as Nigeria, right? So it's important that we build national level innovation systems. That way we can attain scale, right? And we're going to talk more about the national innovation, the national element of the national innovation system, much more as we go along on this program. But for now, please take note that the policies also are made at the national level. Remember when I was talking about the constituents of the system, I said yes, it includes research institutions, it includes governmental agencies, it includes private sector organizations, especially those that are willing to fund the research and test the research and take the knowledge that is generated from the universities and research institutions and experiment with them and create products, but it also includes the policies undergirding and creating the climate, the supportive, enabling climate for this innovativeness. Very, 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 very important. And these policies, like I said, they are not made at the state level, they're not made at the regional level, they are certainly made at the national level. And that is part of why it has to be a national innovation system targeted towards creating, enhancing national competitiveness, which is where the absorptive capacity comes in. The ability to take all the knowledge that is being created and to ensure that we translate it into economic and social development. Wow, I have thoroughly enjoyed doing this with you on this first Tuesday of January and the first Tuesday of 2025, Tuesday, January 7, 2025. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you're finding it as interesting, as stimulating, as intriguing as I am. I am looking forward to going deeper into this, but this is where we're going to draw a curtain for this first edition of the program. Thank you very much for doing this with us. Remember, we have wonderful programs every day of the week on ARC, Amoge Creative Communication. My colleagues are coming up on the subsequent days of the week, and I'll be back same time, same station next week. Until then, please feel free to follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, follow us on LinkedIn, right? We're on Mixlr, and we're also coming on other radio stations. Also remember to send your feedback for us on contact@theamoge.org. You can also send us a message on any of our social media platforms. We look forward to hearing from you. You are the reason why we do this. It's extremely important that we hear back from you. Your feedback matters a lot to us. And until I see you same time, same station next week, my colleagues will keep seeing you tomorrow and the day after. But until I see you same time, same station next week, think innovation, think national innovation, and also think systems. Thank you very much, and see you next week. Bye.